Okay, just a quick video here on the market revolution. And let's see the significance. Well, first of all, this is the early phases of the Industrial Revolution, and possibly more importantly, it is going to directly impact the way people live their lives. It also coincides with many other important changes that are happening at this time, including the democratization of politics and our territorial expansion into the West. Now, we talk about democratization of politics. What we really mean is this universal white male suffrage. As you probably remember, most states, in fact, were removing property requirements, allowing all white males to vote. So if you look at this painting here, which is called Stump Speaking by George Bingham, done in 1853, you can see that people from all walks of life are coming together to discuss issues. And so you have the sort of well-to-do on the stump and the less well-to-do who's actually interacting with that person directly. What you don't see in this painting, however, though, would be any women or any minorities. How about some of the technology that actually drove this change? Here, of course, is the cotton gin by Eli Whitney. And as you may remember, it's quite a time-consuming process to remove the seeds from the cotton fiber. I think it was 3 pounds of seed for every 1 pound of cotton fiber. And so this machine allowed anybody who could turn that crank to do this very quickly, and therefore the production of raw cotton is going to become much more cheap, and therefore it can be sold to these factories in the Northeast and turn into ready-made goods, and that'll just increase demand for those. Here is a model of the McCormick Mechanical Reaper. You can kind of see how it works. I believe it's belt driven, and it looks like that as you sort of ride over top of your crops, it will scoop them up and cut them down for you. This allowed one farmer to produce about 5 times as much while sitting down as previously could be done by people in the field with hand sickles. And so now farmers will start to try to grow more food, the majority of which will be sent off to the market. So they're still producing food for themselves, but now start selling food to the market, and with the money they earn from that, they can begin to buy more finished goods. Another bit of agricultural technological improvement would be John Deere's plows. You can see here, and I realize this photo says 1882 on it, but I don't think the design has changed much in that time. But it's lighter, it's steel, it can be pulled by a horse, and it's very effective for digging down through the hardy root structures in the West. Let's talk about transportation and changes in that particular field. Here obviously is a train, something that has a special place in America's heart, I would say. This is the Essex steam train in Essex, Connecticut, one of the last, as far as I know, steam-powered trains that still operates on a regular basis. But trains obviously are very efficient, very effective. There's a lot of problems early on with brakes and with different sized tracks and so forth. There's a lot of opposition as well from folks who were invested in other transportation modes, especially canals, but they're very effective, and you can basically build them almost anywhere you'd like. I took that picture, by the way, while training Murdoch. Here he is. So the steamboat here and the canal will really open up the waterways, and the steamboat will allow for traffic to go both with and against the current, obviously, and the canal will link, for example, the Great Lakes and the Hudson River and so forth. But it allows for the expansion of these waterways and therefore making them even more effective for transporting crops and finished materials for that matter. The last bit of technology I think we'll talk about in this video is Samuel Morse and his Morse code. And that literally shrinks the world, provides instant communication, which has really, incalculable effects. Okay, so let's talk about the changes in the big scale. Again, subsistence farming is going to be replaced increasingly with the market economy, meaning that you as a farmer will still produce food for yourself and your family, but due to the technology that you have, you're going to start making more crops than you did before, and now those will be sent off to the market. And with the money you earn from selling those, you can begin to buy more and more of these ready-made goods. Those ready-made goods will be built by wage earners in factories, and I'm going to show you what a factory may have looked like throughout the market revolution, possibly not what you're expecting, but the folks who work there, and this is an increasingly diverse population, at least in New England for some time. There are the factory girls who worked for a period of maybe 1 to 3 years before returning home to marry, which I did discuss in my chapter 14 video. But while they're there, they earn a wage, and a wage is a relative value of your labor, obviously. Well, industrialization does decrease the value of your labor because the machine takes a lot of the skill out of the work. And so factory workers dealing with a lot of problems, one of which will be low wages, are bound to that. They don't have the land to fall back on. Instead, they are dependent upon that paycheck. Here is a painting, as you can see. It's called "The Mill on the Brandywine" by John Reuben Smith, and it shows what those factories looked like. Again, alongside rivers and streams, using water power to generate energy to then power machines and so forth. Eric Foner in his video did talk about this specific painting, and he was talking about the harmony, and you can see that there is this real connection between man and his environment, but neither is necessarily taking away from the other, and in fact you could say they're living in this perfect harmony. It's pretty picturesque, to say the least. So what? Well, you have to realize that the market revolution and what arose from it is what political parties were debating on. So what were they talking about? Well, remind yourself of those issues in the Jacksonian period, things like banking and internal improvements, and who's going to pay for that? Is that a responsibility of the federal government, or should that be the states? Tariffs, currency, all of which collectively really is Henry Clay's American system, right? You mentioned Henry Clay. Somebody's ears are ringing somewhere. These political parties, by the way, they are the bond that holds the nation together. And while they reflect differences that are based on sectionalism, and while they suggest different paths for the United States to take, they are the instrument of the American government. And as such, they absorb potentially dangerous threats. So if you remember nullification, as proposed by John C. Calhoun in South Carolina, that's divisive, that's dangerous, and yet at the end of the day, he is a Democrat, right? Here. You have Henry Clay of the Whigs and Andrew Jackson. Well, where does John C. Calhoun fit into that? I mean, he leans to the Democratic side, and so again, these political parties sort of, hold the Union together. It's interesting, therefore, to look at the election of 1860, where the political system sort of fell apart. Keep in mind that Lincoln's election was viewed by some as proof that the political system had failed, and therefore, breaking the Union or shattering the Union was justified. I know this is a little bit ahead of where we are right now in our curriculum, but just so you can see what I'm talking about, in 1860, Lincoln wins the North and no Southern states, and yet that's enough to propel him into the presidency. And so I did suggest in class that you take a look at this video by Eric Foner. Again, he is a highly distinguished professor of history from Columbia University. Many consider him the expert on this period and Reconstruction, as you can see here. So I encourage you to take a look. It's about 2.5 minutes, and he discusses the market revolution. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments or feel free to email. And as always, like and subscribe. Have a good day.